A former Lee County deputy arrested after he's accused of taking money from people who he pulled over.
State Road 82. Documents say they were Hispanics with little to no identification.
Both Lee County and the city of Fort Myers are infamous for extorting Hispanics. So it could be that the police officers, many times when they catch people that are illegal, it's a good opportunity for an extortion. They can make a lot of money. I told you. A lot of people didn't believe me. I even had to delete the video that I did about SB 1718 in the city of Fort Myers and how this law would make it even worse for the Latino community, which was already being extorted by Lee County and city of Fort Myers law enforcement. The report by NBC2 explains that this Lee County sheriff's officer was specifically targeting nothing other than Latinos to steal from their wallets and purses money, thinking that because these people were Hispanic, that they wouldn't be heard if they were to report him for stealing from them. Now, this really unravels and opens up a total can of worms. For one, the notion that if a Latino is robbed by a police officer, the police officer doesn't even have to worry about the complaint because after all, Latinos, law enforcement doesn't care when they file a report. Something that I've been saying on my YouTube channel for a while now, and a lot of people criticize me and tell me that I'm lying and that this isn't true. So if this wasn't true, then why would this police officer in written statement say, yeah, I'm targeting Latinos because, yeah, we know that law enforcement doesn't really care if they file a report. In other words, law enforcement can victimize Latinos and not have to worry about the repercussions. Now, I think this police officer in particular did something to aggravate somebody and they wanted him out of the way because he's definitely not the only police officer that's doing this. In fact, it is somewhat of a police gang within the Lee County Sheriff's Office and the city of Fort Myers that work together to extort Hispanics. In my previous videos, I had mentioned that Lee County Sheriff's officers, particularly in Lehigh Acres, have been detaining Latinos and extorting them or outright stealing from them. And this is nothing new. This has been happening in Lee County for decades, and this isn't the only police officer that's doing this. If you think this is just a one-off odd occurrence, you have smoked yourself retarded. The Lee County Sheriff's Office and the city of Fort Myers work somewhat like a gang to detain, pull over, traffic stops, anybody who's illegal, extort money from them. If they have a vehicle, they take the title. If they don't have a title, they demand the title. If you don't give them the title, who knows what could happen to you. These are police gangs within these police departments that for decades now have been robbing the Hispanic community blind. They know they're under heat for this situation because it's starting to get notoriety on social media, so they just grabbed this particular police officer and threw him underneath the bus. This isn't just one police officer who's doing this. These are police gangs, and this isn't a new thing. It's been happening in Lee County now for decades. Corruption within the Lee County Sheriff's Office is so bad that at this point, they really need to have federal forces come in and just figure out exactly what's going on. Some of these police officers even engage in organized theft rings on immigrants where they have actual auctions where they auction off everything that they've stole from Latinos. There's two ways that these gangs function. One is that they hold an auction for the vehicles that they steal from people that don't have a driver's license. This is where people, specific people in the community, are invited to an actual auction where they auction off the vehicles that they have taken from Hispanics. The other way that this works is that a particular person wants a vehicle. Let's say somebody wants a $40,000 GMC Sierra. This truck is worth at least $40,000. So now all the sheriffs that are part of the gang are patrolling the streets of Fort Myers looking for this $40,000 GMC Sierra. Now, the police officer is going to sell it for half of what it's worth. So if the truck's worth $40,000, he's going to expect $20,000 cash. Now, the person buying doesn't get to pick the color, doesn't get to pick too much, the mileage, none of that. It's just, okay, this truck is worth roughly $40,000. We're going to get you this truck, but you're going to pay half that price. You can't be too picky about the specifics of the truck. It's just, okay, we're going to go out there and we're going to get you this truck. You have the option to order the vehicle you want from the police department and they'll find an illegal that's driving it and take it from them. Or you also have the option of going to their auction where they have the random vehicles that they've stole where you can get these vehicles for about half the price they sell for. You gotta have cash money. Now, the report says that this police officer was literally just pulling people over and stealing money from their purses and wallets. This is just a small fish in this pond, guys. These Lee County Sheriff's officers have been running an outright RICO type racket where they have been extorting people, stealing from the community, and running freaking auction houses of all the vehicles that they steal from illegals. So this isn't just some random once in a blue moon type of scenario. These were organized crime rings within the police department, police gangs that have been extorting the community now for decades. And they're throwing this guy underneath the bus simply because for some reason or another he must have stepped on somebody's foot. It's great to see this is getting handled. However, it is concerning that it exists to begin with. And if you think that this is just one person doing this and that this isn't a broader organized crime ring, you have smoked yourself retarded. As you guys know, I made an entire series about how the Lee County Sheriff's Office is extorting Hispanics in the community. I received so many threats about the video that I ultimately had to delete the video. People were saying that my claims were unfounded and that the Lee County Sheriff's Office would never engage in a systematic extortion of the Latino community. But now we're starting to see with this arrest that what I've been telling you guys about police in this county isn't a lie. And this isn't the first time this has happened on my YouTube channel. I'll make a documentary about something that's happening in the community. People will say that I'm outright lying, that these things aren't happening, that I'm crazy, that I'm running some liberal agenda. And then, time passes and arrests are made. And exactly what I told you guys was happening on the streets, you see it in black and white paper that I wasn't lying. A few examples would be like what's happening now in Alabama, where the Latino community is being robbed and some of them have even got killed because the law enforcement refuses to accept criminal charges if they're coming from Latinos, which is actually the same thing that's happening here in Fort Myers. It's the same exact scenario where law enforcement doesn't listen to police reports from Latinos, doesn't investigate them. So if a Latino comes forth and says a police officer robbed him, endemically, the core problem here is that law enforcement does not investigate crime reports if they're coming from the Latino community. And then these same agencies go on to make statements like the Latino community doesn't cooperate with law enforcement. How the crap do you expect them to collaborate with law enforcement when they file a police report and you don't want to investigate it because if they're Latinos? Now, if a rich white person makes a report in a gated community, they go to a homeless camp and beat the crap out of homeless people, kidnap the homeless people, and force somebody to take responsibility for that crime, whether they committed it or not, so that the rich people in the gated communities think that law enforcement is proactive. But people that live in these hoods and in the communities know the law enforcement is completely ineffective. And a few changes have happened in the last few years that have made it even more difficult. Say for the fact that now police profiling can't happen the way it used to. Police profiling was a huge thing many years ago before social media and cell phones. Today, law enforcement cannot profile people. Police profiling was pretty much one of the few tools that law enforcement had to go after criminal organizations on the streets. Endemically, the problem is that the laws simply don't work and law enforcement doesn't really have the resources to go after these criminals. And even if they did, the state of Florida is becoming so dangerous that now you're seeing things like what happened with Julio. This was the young rapper from Jacksonville that was killed in Tampa that had what they say was an $80,000 price tag on his head. The Uber driver that was killed in Jacksonville recently as collateral damage on a hit by a gang. This is just a random gang in Jacksonville and they put out a $20,000 hit on an individual. When they made the hit, they accidentally killed the Uber driver who had nothing to do with the problem. Street gangs in Florida are getting to the point where they're putting out hits on people. If they want somebody dead, they don't exactly have to go and catch them themselves. They go to all the other gangs and be like, hey dude, we got a $20,000, $80,000, $100,000 hit on this person. They put a price tag on your head and you're gone. That's to the level that organized crime has got in the state of Florida, where criminals just simply put hits on people and they don't exactly have to go kill that person themselves. They just let all the gangs know, hey, we need this person gone, and somebody will do it. The sad thing about this scenario is that law enforcement is behaving exactly like gangs. This is a method of operation of gangs in the state of Florida to put hits out on people, and this is exactly how law enforcement works. In fact, these police officers are acting exactly like executioners in the gang. There's a hit out for a vehicle and the police officers go and get the lick. This is exactly what gang members do. Law enforcement agencies in the state of Florida are participating in gang hits exactly the way gangs will put a hit on a person. And this is a problem that has always existed in the state of Florida. If you have a problem with somebody, you don't exactly have to go get that person yourself. You just put a hit on that person and any gang will take it. And that's exactly what these police officers in Florida are doing. They are simply getting a hit. We're looking for this. Go out there and get it. It's crazy to think that law enforcement officers are engaging in the same exact modus of operation as street gang shooters. The issue with corruption in Lee County Sheriff's Office has got so bad that on Facebook, the police department doesn't even let people comment anymore. They're blocking comments on social media because the amount of people that go on there to say, hey, we've been reporting a crack house next door for years and you guys still haven't done anything about it. Hey, I'm getting robbed by your officers. Basically, there are so many accusations and so many claims from the civilian force about law enforcement in Lee County that the Lee County Sheriff's Office has actually had to go through and close comments on Facebook because there's so many people in the community that are going to their Facebook account to say, hey, you guys are involved in massive scale corruption. Now, if you've been following my YouTube channel, we've been talking about these problems in the community for years now. Only recently that other news agencies with more credibility apparently are picking up these articles. It's the public in general becoming aware that these situations exist. But again, on our YouTube channel, we have been talking about these topics for a while. So on our YouTube channel, we have extensively covered the topic of Lee County Sheriff's officers devoting all of their time to working in the Latino communities because there they are extorting the Latinos. Thus, while the Latino communities are being extorted, areas of high drug use like North Fort Myers are running rampant with crime and addiction, and nothing's being done about these problem areas because the cops are solely focused on extorting Latinos. And this is sadly agency-wide. This isn't just one individual. It's gotten so bad in Lee County, Florida, that now Lee County, Florida has the highest drug overdose rate of any county in all of Southwest Florida. And the reason it's happening is because law enforcement doesn't care about crime in general. They're out all night trying to catch Latinos to extort. Lee County, Florida now has a higher drug overdose death rate than Sarasota and Manatee County. That is just unbelievable. And the reason that the drug overdose crisis has got so bad in the 239 Lee County, Florida, is because the police officers are out all night finding people that they can extort and steal from instead of actually going after the criminals. It's led to an absolute explosion of drug addiction in that county. A lot of people in Fort Myers know that these Latinos are getting extorted by the cops and they don't care. But do you know that countless American lives are being lost in Lee County, Florida? Because as these law enforcement officers are busy going after innocent people to extort, the real criminals and drug dealers have the opportunity to take care of their business without having to worry about law enforcement being on their tail since they're busy trying to find people to extort. Laws like SB 1718 blew this situation off the top. Now that in Fort Myers, they have SB 1718, these police officers went on a complete rampage against the Latino community to the point that entire neighborhoods like Pine Manor, the entire community left because these police officers in Lee County, Florida took the opportunity with SB 1718, that's Ron DeSantis' new immigration law, to outright target Latinos and extort them more than ever to the point where Latino communities just had to leave Lee County because law enforcement was so relentless on their case. I did a whole video series on this topic, and it's no surprise that now Lee County Sheriff's Office are saying, hey, hold on, wait a minute. This is getting out of control. We're getting too many reports of police officers extorting people in the community, and we got to start putting an end to this. But this is nothing more than a bandage. You guys remember when the SB 1718 law came out, and I made all those videos telling you that the Latino community in Fort Myers was going to be under complete attack when this law took effect? It didn't happen like that everywhere. Why do you think I chose Lee County to make those videos? I didn't make those videos in Sarasota or Tampa. I made those videos in Lee County, Florida, because I knew that in this county, the community was already being extorted by law enforcement to the degree that many people even left the community because the extortions became so often that people couldn't live in this county anymore. The sad part is that I predicted this scenario to take place before SB 1718 came in. I made a series of videos detailing exactly how in Lee County, Florida, these police officers were going to use this law to extort the community more than ever, and that's exactly what they did. And it's an embarrassment that in the state of Florida, what happens is a new law comes in with a good intention to help the community, and these law enforcement officers think, hey, it's a free piñata for us. Now we can go after these people, extort the living crap out of the community, and we don't have to worry about repercussions, especially if they're getting deported at the time of getting extorted. This is completely an embarrassment to Lee County Sheriff's Florida. And you know what? This isn't just one police officer. Really, it's to the point where maybe Internal Affairs needs to come in, or the FBI, and figure out exactly what is happening in this county. They need to make some stings and catch 10 or 20 of these police officers, build some cases, and take 20 or 30 of these police officers out of the way, because this has been happening on a massive scale. This is within the Lee County Sheriff's Office. It's also rampant within the Fort Myers Police Department. Nobody hates a dirty cop more than a good cop, and really this situation needs to get resolved. There's no way that these laws that were intended to help the community improve and get rid of illegal immigrants is just a freaking piñata for law enforcement officers to go out there and rob the Latino communities blind. And the saddest part is that I was able to predict this before it happened. When I saw these new laws coming, I said, oh, these boys in Fort Myers and Lee County are going to have a field day. They're going to have a complete freaking piñata on Palm Beach Boulevard. And that's exactly what they did. It's embarrassing that law enforcement can do these behaviors. Everybody in the community knows. This isn't a secret, by the way. This is something, if you live in Fort Myers, Florida, or Lee County, Florida, and you're illegal, you know that you better have your title in the glove compartment, because if the cops catch you and you don't have it, you're getting deported. Violence is out of control in Fort Myers. Gangs are out of control. Homelessness is everywhere. The streets of Fort Myers and Lee County are completely out of control. Endless crime. Their drug overdose death rates are the highest in all of Southwest Florida. The streets of Fort Myers are empty. Entire communities have had to clear out because these guys are out there extorting everybody. Not because they're out there enforcing the law. They're out there extorting people. It's destroyed an entire community. And it's not that people are all illegal and afraid of the law. It's that even people that are legal are just tired of police officers using them or viewing them as nothing more than a piñata. The situation in Lee County, Florida is desperate. It has quickly become the worst county in all of Southwest Florida. To think that the drug overdose death rates in Fort Myers are higher than Sarasota and Bradenton is hard to wrap your head around that idea. That's how bad things have gotten in Lee County, Florida. But how do you think things are going to get better when the cops are nothing more than a gang, and instead of being focused on making their community a safer place, the only thing they're focused on is how many licks they can hit, like if there were some shooters for a gang. And one of the most dangerous practices that Lee County has going on is, for example, if a Hispanic community is being patrolled, they'll put in Cuban police officers to patrol a Guatemalan neighborhood. So on paper, they're saying, oh, we have Latino police officers working Latino neighborhoods, but Cubans don't politic with Guatemalans. Guatemalans don't politic with Mexicans. And I think one of the most dangerous practices that this agency has is to put people in particular neighborhoods to patrol that are the same general demographic. They'll put a Cuban cop to patrol a Guatemalan neighborhood because they speak Spanish, but those Cubans are kind of really not politicking with the Guatemalans. So this is a very dangerous practice that this agency is doing. For example, I'm sure this police officer, they had him working along 82. That's predominantly a black area outside of Lehigh Acres. So he was there to patrol for the black community, but he was targeting migrants within that community. And the same thing happens with the city of Fort Myers. Sometimes they'll grab a Cuban cop and they'll put him in a Guatemalan neighborhood, and they'll be like, well, you know, it's a Hispanic officer patrolling a Hispanic community. Like, yeah, but that Cuban is not exactly politicking the same way those Guatemalans are, and he's actually more of a detriment to that community than, let's say, because what they don't want to do, this is what they don't want in Lee County, Florida. They don't want a white police officer to get caught up with extorting a Guatemalan, because that looks bad on them from a racial perspective. So they'll go in and they'll put some Cubans in the Guatemalan area, and then those Cubans are kind of like, you know, probably going to have to pay back some homage or something to the people on top of them, because somehow they're all part of the racket. But the idea is, for example, you're not going to have a white officer beat a black person. It's got to be a black cop to beat that black person. But that black cop, he has to pay a price for being able to, you know what I mean? It all works in a circle. They can't really put a white cop to go out there and just run a complete rampage of theft and extortion in a Hispanic neighborhood. They got to throw some Hispanic police officers in the mix. But those Hispanic police officers are not the same exact nationality. For example, Cubans don't politic within the realm of, you know, race. Cubans don't politic with Guatemalans. Cubans are more closely affiliated with whites. For example, there's communities in Lehigh Acres where, like Buckingham, for example, where it's mostly where all the police officers live in Buckingham. It's mostly white police officers, and they live in a community of white Cubans and Puerto Ricans. So Puerto Ricans and Cubans politic more with whites than with Guatemalans. So they'll throw a Cuban police officer or a Puerto Rican police officer into a Guatemalan neighborhood, and they'll say, well, we have Hispanic police officers working these districts, or we have black police officers working these districts. And that in itself is somewhat of a ploy to distract from the fact that within the police department, they do have politicking with race. And this is a huge and very dangerous practice that Lee County, Florida is taking part of. Why don't they put a Guatemalan cop to patrol the Guatemalan neighborhood? Why they got to put a Cuban cop in there? Now, this has created a situation where now, like, the Guatemalan community is actually at war with the Cubans, like, not so much like on a street violence level, but economically, it's just really made a huge dent between the Cuban and Guatemalan community in Lee County, Florida. It has further fragmented the minorities, so the minorities don't mess with each other, because they'll grab, for example, a Cuban cop and put him in a Puerto Rican neighborhood. Now there's all these feuds between Cubans and Puerto Ricans, or there's these feuds between Guatemalans and Cubans, because they'll grab, they'll do the same thing. Like, they'll put a Mexican cop in a Cuban neighborhood. Like in Lehigh Acres, areas that are all Cubans, they'll throw a Mexican cop in, and the Mexican cop isn't going to show any mercy to the Cubans that are living there. And it's a very dangerous practice, because it further fragments the Latino community and, you know, makes them easier to pick off. They have more power. But it's wild how you'll see in Lee County, Florida, a Mexican cop patrolling a Cuban neighborhood, a Cuban cop patrolling a Guatemalan neighborhood. It really just goes to show how from the top, they're fragmenting the Latino community. It used to be that Latinos were all one single unit. You know, Latinos were Latinos, Cubans used to look out for Guatemalans, Mexicans for Cubans. But now, Lee County Sheriff's Office, they've grabbed a Cuban cop, put him in the Guatemalan hood, Mexican cops in the Cuban hoods, and now you're starting to have like a lot of tension between the Latino communities against each other. So it's not like the white cops go after a Latino community. That's not how they operate, okay? If the white people want to hurt the Guatemalan community, they'll grab some Cuban and Puerto Rican cops and put them into a Guatemalan community, and then it doesn't look like it's coming from a racial narrative. And this is what Lee County, Florida has been doing. They'll grab Cuban cops and put them in the Guatemalan area. And you're like, wow, you know, it doesn't look like it's coming from a racial narrative, because they use somebody else to do their dirty work for them. So there's a lot of problems in these agencies. And the criminal analytics show more than well what's going on in Lee County, Florida. Their drug overdose death rate now is close to 50 per 100,000. That's completely out of control. Currently in Lee County, Florida, the drug overdose death rate for Hispanics, blacks, and others is 22 per 100,000, but it's over 50 per 100,000 for the white population. That means that the white population is disproportionately more than 2 times as likely, 2.5 times more likely to die from an overdose. So if the white population in Lee County, Florida is 2.5 times more likely to die from an overdose, and your county now has the highest drug overdose death rate in all of Southwest Florida, far above the state average, where should Lee County, Florida be putting its effort? Guys, we're not talking about the white population is overdosing at 20% more, or 40% more, or 80% more. They're overdosing at a rate of 250% more than everybody else in the community. In Lee County, Florida, the drug overdose death rate for whites is 2.5 times higher than blacks and Hispanics. That should let you know one of two things. The Lee County Sheriff's Office is letting the white population do whatever the crap they want, which has led to rampant drug addiction, rampant drug sales. This is not a normal scenario. Okay, what's happening in Lee County, Florida is absolutely analytically mind-boggling. To give you an idea, in Dade County, Miami-Dade County, the overdose death rate for the white population is 10 per 100,000. So white people in Miami-Dade County are 5 times less likely to die from a drug overdose than whites in Lee County. In Lee County, as a white person, you are 5 times more likely to die from a drug overdose. Why is this scenario happening? Well, for example, in Dade County, the police patrols the areas that have the most crime. But in Lee County, Florida, most of the crime and drug addiction, homelessness, and all these bad things that are happening right now, especially after COVID, are happening in the white community, but the white communities are not being patrolled. Despite the fact that white people are dying 2.5 times more often from drug overdoses than Latinos, if you look at the arrest records, now they're focused solely on blacks and Hispanics in Lee County, which has led the white population to say, hey, we can take all the drugs we want, we can do all the crime we want, because the Lee County Sheriff's Office isn't going to arrest us if we're white. And this is what's led to Lee County right now having an extraordinarily high drug overdose rate, especially in comparison to other races. The white community needs to be patrolled. These individuals can't just be rampantly engaging in all types of criminal activity and not have to worry about the law. Take the fact, for example, let's look at Cape Coral, Florida. Cape Coral, Florida has one of the highest incidents of DUI of anywhere in the state of Florida. But when they detain a white woman who's under the influence, they don't arrest her. People that are white, they can do DUIs in Lee County, Florida. Particularly in Cape Coral, this is a problem. And now we can get deeper in the analytics about this topic, and you'll understand that there's even more analytical confusion about what's happening in Lee County, Florida. Places like Cape Coral, Sarasota, that are more kind of upper class whites, they're very lenient on those people when they engage in a DUI. You know, a lot of times these agencies, when somebody has a car accident and there's alcohol or drugs involved, they don't really report it on the accident report. In other words, part of the white population is going out there in DUIs, getting into accidents, even killing people under the influence, and law enforcement, because they're white again, lets them engage in these activities. Take the white areas of Lehigh Acres. The white kids can ride their ATVs anywhere in Lehigh Acres. Can a black kid do the same thing in a black neighborhood? Probably not. And this is really the problem with Lee County, Florida, is that law enforcement is just solely focused on the Latino or black communities. And this has led to rampant crime in the white community. And now the white community is dying disproportionately in a lot of different categories because complete lawlessness, laws exist for a reason. And a lot of people are dying in Lee County, Florida from overdoses, accidents, because the white population can simply do whatever they want. You know, one of the biggest problems that Lee County has, if you start to look at incidents of vehicle accidents and You'll see like Lee County analytics and you're like, wow, this county has a lot of vehicular problems. Why? Because law enforcement is not worried about safety. Law enforcement is worried about profiling, and the reason they're profiling these days is so that they can extort people. Just don't think that there isn't analytical information that clearly illustrates that there's lawlessness in Lee County, Florida. When you're seeing this disproportionate gap among the white population overdosing, should let you know there's a problem. When you look at incident reports, car accidents, car insurance rates, and some of these zip codes, there's a problem in this county. There's analytical information that shows you that there's a lot of lawlessness in this county. And then there's also a layer of hypocrisy among that in many of these law enforcement agencies wanting to portray themselves like they're freaking heroes when they have on their hands a catastrophic situation. People are literally losing their lives in Lee County, Florida, because law enforcement isn't doing their job. The working class person is portrayed as an outlaw criminal, while the people that are engaging in criminal activity have free reign. There's a problem, Lee County. And you could really dive into analytics for accidents, drug overdoses, and you can keep going on, and it'll clearly illustrate the problem in this county. It's analytical at this point that there's a problem in this county. Things in this county are in very bad shape. It's an embarrassment. And the sad thing is that many people in Lee County, Florida would rather see law enforcement go out there and extort Latinos and work outside of due process to discriminate these communities than they'd rather see Lee County be a safe place to live. And that's really the sad thing about this scenario, is that many people are aware these things are happening in Lee County, Florida, but they don't seem to care. They're actually happy that law enforcement is going out there and targeting these communities. However, their job isn't to extort people. Their job is to go after criminals, and criminals in Lee County, Florida, in a lot of circumstances, got complete free rein to do whatever they want. Others are just completely blind. They see the news reports, they see the Lee County Sheriff officer making all these outrageous claims on the internet, and they believe him. In fact, he's gone as far as saying that crime in Lee County, Florida is at a 50-year low. Talking about 50, that's the drug overdose death rate in Lee County right now. There's no 50-year low. 50 per 100,000 is an all-time high. How can you have a 50-year low in crime when you have 50 per 100,000 dying from drug overdoses in the white community? But people believe these lies that they hear on social media. They blindly follow these individuals, and they never really question the real analytics. On one hand, the Lee County Sheriff's Office says crime is at a 50-year low. Really? Well, what about those 50 per 100,000 that are dying from drug overdose? How? Explain to me how crime can be at a 50-year low when you have the highest drug overdose rate that has ever existed in Lee County, Florida. This type of policing simply doesn't work. And I've been telling you guys for a while now, when you look at counties that actually have the lowest drug addictions in Florida, the lowest overdose death rates, the lowest homicide rates, they're the counties that have the most diversity. Fox News, they really put a spin on this stuff to the point where people actually believe that Latino and Hispanic communities are detrimental. However, they forget to note that in Lee County, Florida, it's not Latinos that are dying disproportionately from drug addiction, it's the white population. Oh, Hispanics are bringing drugs into the country and killing the white people. Bro, Miami-Dade County has the lowest drug overdose death rate for the white population. If you're a white person and you want to be safe, your best bet is to move to an area that is mostly Hispanic. Because the analytics show one thing, but of course, the Fox News spin is another. The homicides now are starting to happen more in the white communities. The drug overdoses are plaguing the white community, but will law enforcement ever go after the white community for their own benefit? No. They're going to continue going after minorities. You can keep believing the narratives that Fox News is throwing out there, but the reality is that the safest place for white people in Florida when it comes to not dying from an overdose is places like Miami. they want to put it out there like Latinos are trying to hurt the white people, but the white population that lives in Dade County, it's the safest white population. This is where white people are the safest, because nothing is hurting white people more than drug addiction. But in Miami-Dade County, in the Hispanic community, Hispanics keep drugs out of their community, and it's safer. And then, of course, that doesn't change the narrative. And the crazy thing is that even Hispanics that live in Miami are not aware that the narrative that they believe in, that's a narrative set to defame their community, is actually a lie. Hispanics actually believe this narrative that's a negative narrative about themselves, and they never sit down and look at the analytics. It's like, I wouldn't believe how many times I run into Hispanics who think, oh, Miami's horrible, there's drugs, huh? And I'm like, bro, look at these numbers. Miami's the safest place you can be when it comes to drugs. Where are you getting this from? Well, man, I heard it in the news. I'm like, what news? Oh, Fox News or America TV. I'm like, bro, those are Republican news sources that want to paint Hispanics, Cubans, Venezuelans, Guatemalans, Mexicans as evil people because they have an anti-Hispanic agenda. You run with that information and you spread bad information that is aimed at destroying you, the person that's spreading this information. But people don't question it. People, even Hispanics themselves, they hear this stuff, they believe it, and they start spilling hate about themselves, because Hispanics, we don't have that racism. See, Americans recognize this is coming from a place of hate, but Hispanics, we're so innocent. We don't have that racism built into us to where we'll even spread misinformation that's coming from a racist angle about ourselves, because we don't really realize that the real reason this information's out there isn't because it's true. It's because it's an agenda against us. And a lot of times Hispanics are just so innocent with racism that we actually propagate ideas that are aimed at destroying us, because we're so innocent that we don't really recognize the intentions about this information. I spent a lot of time of my life in Fort Myers, and this stuff has been happening for a long time. It's nothing new, and it's good that it's getting some exposure, but this is just the tip of the iceberg in this county. Have you ever been extorted by a police officer or had police steal something from you? Let me know in the comment section what you think. I just want to make one final point about this topic. This situation, this is the town of Immokalee in Collier County. Now, Collier County is safe. It's got lower overdose death rates. It's got less homicide rates. Collier County is like less than half the crime of Lee County, even though they're right next to each other. And demographically, they're very similar counties. In Collier County, this extortion racket thing has been happening as well, to a smaller degree. But it was like, when it first started, it was like, well, if you're illegal and the cops catch you, you're going to get deported. But, it's a lot of times this comes, and let's be clear about this. This is a practice that stems from the way Mexico and Guatemala work, Let's say you're driving down the road in Mexico and you get pulled over by some federales or something, they're going to extort you. And if you're a criminal, they're going to extort you even more. And this is a practice that Hispanics brought to this area. So the origin of this practice isn't like evil white man came up with the idea to extort your illegals. This is a practice that, like, illegals, driving around Immokalee or something out there in the fields would carry their title with them, because if they get pulled over, they have some type of bargaining chip with law enforcement. But, like, I do feel that it happens in Collier County and other counties in South Florida. But, like, Collier County sheriff's officers, they're not out there looking for this, I'm sure that there's sheriff's officers in Collier County who'll pull over somebody and the person will be like, look, man, let's work something out. But there's a difference between, law enforcement corruptly letting somebody get off the hook, because, again, the idea of this type of thing doesn't stem from the United States. This comes from Guatemala, Mexico, dealing with the police down there, where if you're outside the law, you're going to get extorted by the cops. So many times it's not the cops that make the proposition. I wouldn't doubt that there's police officers who pull over any illegal and, they got a kid in the back seat or something. They got a family. They're wearing work clothes, and the cop's like, man, I don't want to do this, Beautiful people down there, beautiful, hardworking people. And I can see a lot of police officers not wanting to send these people back or something. So it's definitely possible that many of these people make the proposition to law enforcement. But there's a difference between the cops getting a proposition from somebody versus like what's happening in Lee County, where the cops are like, you know what, dude, I'm getting me 3 brand new Silverados tonight. You know what I mean? It's a whole different thing. So yeah, this happens. There's no doubt that this happens throughout the whole country. But the particularity about Lee County, Florida, isn't that it's happening. It's like the way it's happening and the fact that they're purposely going out there to make it happen. That's like, okay, man, this is kind of getting abusive. And by the way, for the white people that believe in deportations and are against illegal immigration, they're not deporting these people when they do this. They're letting them go, okay? So it's, okay, let's just understand this aspect. The cops are not detaining these people and arresting them. They're letting them go because they're getting ripped off, okay? It's like to the people that are, anti-immigrant, anti-illegal person, they're not out there in full force deporting people. Okay, if you look at the analytics for deportations and people detained by ICE, no, they're not turning these people into ICE. Okay, this isn't like, oh, the cops are out there because you drive through Lee County, like, man, they must have a lot of deportations. No, dude, they're not deporting these people. Okay, they're not turning these people into ICE. Okay, I don't know if you got that part of it, okay? Because a lot of people are like, well, they're getting deported, or they're here illegally. Yeah, the cops are not turning these people into ICE. The cops are not deporting these individuals. The cops are simply hitting a lick. They're robbing these individuals. And then a lot of times the white population, they're like, whoa, look at this, man. They're going after the illegals. Yeah, Lee County Sheriff's Office, they're going after the... No, dude, they're letting them go because they just got robbed. So this is another aspect that people in the community have kind of, and again, back to analytical information. If you see the amount of presence from Lee County Sheriff's Office in these communities, and then you see the analytics for arrests and analytics for how many people are actually getting deported, you're probably going to be like, yo, that's a lot of police presence for very little results. It's kind of like, okay, if there's not much police presence, then the analytics should be showing it. But no, dude, they're not serving a law and order purpose. Because a lot of people think, well, just look the other way. It's serving a law and order purpose. These people are getting deported. No, they're not getting deported. They're getting extorted. Let's not leave that little detail out of the picture. Not only is like this not serving a law enforcement purpose for immigration, it's also not serving a law enforcement purpose for the white community. It's detrimental to everybody. It's not like there's anything positive that can be said about law enforcement extorting illegals. Lee County Sheriff's Office. Is the piñata over? Is the party only getting started? Or have they beat this dead horse to a pulp and there's nothing left to extract from it? It's hard to tell at this point. The damage has been done to the community, These are public resources that these officers are using, their vehicles and all that, which, should be being used to keep our community safe and are actually being used to it doesn't do anything, actually.